Hey everyone, welcome back to the lab. In this video, we're going to be talking about how I built a stock options scanner in F#. So a few times a year, I look up a stocks option chain and I think I found a gem of a deal. It gets me thinking, what other deals have I been missing? And so I go and scour some options chains for several hours to come up with a few decent looking trades, but then I'm always left wondering whether they're actually good or not. And so obviously this is a huge waste of time and it never really ends up with an amazing deal, even though it's probable there are some good options deals out there. And so I figured I could save myself time and get a more confident read on deal goodness by simply building an options screener myself. Because, why buy when you can build? Am I right? And so I built myself a rudimentary options screener in F#, my favorite programming language. And here I'm going to share a little bit about how I did it. Now, real quick, if you want to build full stack apps with F#, I start all of my web projects with Cloud Seed, the full stack F# project boilerplate. You can learn more about that here. All right, first we're going to start off with the project hypothesis. I think this is super important. I start everything with hypotheses because if you don't have a good hypothesis, then it's probably not worth doing. And so the hypothesis for this is pretty simple. And it's basically that I spend too much time on options and I get terrible, terrible results. I spend hours looking at all the chains and then I get a few decent deals, but it's like hard for me to tell if they're really good deals. And usually they're not even that good. And so if I can at least save myself time and cover more trades, cover more different options chains with my heuristics, then I improve my ROI automatically because I'm saving myself time. And so, the context here is that the options is a form of gambling and we can potentially win out by making better guesses than others. And honestly, this is really never true unless you're like super deep into finance, but we're going to do it anyway for science. The problem is that, manually searching for options takes too much time. Like when I get into these moods, I'm like spending hours doing this for like no results. And so that's bad. And so the solution here is just do the scanning automatically to save myself the time and really the headspace of doing this. And because I'm covering more ground, theoretically, I'll get better results. Okay, here's how it works from a high level. You can find the full source code. Actually, I've scrubbed it of my API keys and stuff, but you can run it yourself and supply your own API key. And this whole project is available in my HAMY Labs example repo linked here, which here's the option scanner thing itself. But I've also got dozens of different projects here that I built over the years in F# and a few in like C# and Svelte and stuff like that. Anyway, this is available to Minions members, which you can learn more about here. And so really, the option scanner is a very simple CLI tool that just pulls the latest data for stocks I'm interested in. It calculates some derivative values, and then it filters to the best ones based on some heuristics I provide. Very simple. And so it's got a little bit of configuration. So the inputs are going to be, the stocks you're interested in. I guess I could scan the whole stock market, but a lot of these APIs, they have limits on it. And I also think that it's probably bad to be scanning the whole stock market because sure, there's going to be good looking options plays in some areas, but that's because the underlying stock is like not real. So I think it is very useful to like at least limit to some stocks you're interested in yourself. So that's why I put this here. And again, it really limits the amount of chains you have to process. So the processing time, also the hits on the API, which are usually limited. The other one is to like, what do you think is a good trade, right? The importance of this is that it's doing the trade filtering for you. So it's much faster and you save yourself time and headspace. And so this was important for me to have an input. So once you do that and kick it off, it's going to do some processing. So it's going to pull the latest options chains data from the market APIs. It was an interesting little puzzle to figure out how do I figure out what options chains or what days options get traded on so that I can actually ask the API for this stuff. So that was a little bit fun. So anyway, it does that for you. Then it enriches this data with extra calculations. There's always the options Greeks and stuff, and like the APIs often will supply those, but only to higher tier subscriptions. This is a side project. I don't want to pay a lot. And so I often will just focus on dumber enrichments that aren't provided, things like return on risk per year, your absolute return, things like that, that you probably care about if you're doing these plays. And then finally, it's going to filter that enriched data based on, the heuristics you provided up here for what a good trade is. Finally, it's going to output that because, you're a human, you still need to like look at the thing and decide if you actually want to trade it. But it's only going to show you the good trades. And so this helps you, lower your time and mental overhead for doing this stuff. All right, so how it's built. So some of these are affiliate links, and this is really just this market data API because it was available. So why not? So I built this very simply so that I could iterate more on the data and analysis side instead of wasting time with infra and niceties that I may never need. You know, I'm always like, oh, it'd be fun to like build this core and then I'll like build a front end with HTMX and I'll do all this stuff. But it's like, if you can't even get the core working, like there's no point in building a web interface really. And so I always like to kind of start with a very simple script to see if this thing even makes sense. And then if there's any traction around it or I like it, then I kind of worry about how do I furnish this thing. The tech is really simple. It's just, you know, command line interface with F# and .NET. You literally just type in .NET run and it works. And the API that I'm using is market data. And actually, I'll just demo this for you real fast just to kind of show you what it's doing. And so here's my project. The program is in here, but I'm not going to show you this because it has my real API key in it and I don't want anyone to steal it. So I'll just run it with .NET run and you'll kind of see what it does. First, it like parses out all the expiration dates for this year and next year. And so it figured all that out. And then it's like, I'm going to go fetch all of the options chains for the stocks that you're interested in. I have a few pre-configured stocks. And this will take a minute because it's doing API runs for each of these stocks times each of these options chains datas. But this is why it's like a great thing to make the computer do this and not make the human do this because it takes too much time. And so as it goes, I kind of print out some like little debug statements. Like there's some options chains dates that like theoretically there's options trades there, but it might be like an off date, especially these ones in the future in like 2025 where we just don't have any data. And so I like to output it here just for debugging purposes. So we know like, oh, the reason these are all missing is because actually the API can't find anything for us. And you can see we're still fetching like quite a lot of these options chains. It's going pretty slow today. And this could obviously just be sped up with probably parallelizing these requests, but I didn't even bother. All right, and then finally it returned with all of my good picks. And so you can see, I mean, this is obviously very ugly, but you know, we're moving fast and not making things pretty. So we got like, here it thinks it's a good pick. I've got some of my enriched data like return on risk. This is be a 6% return on risk over a year. Absolute return on the money is about 7.7%. The expiration is 0620. This is for net, so Cloudflare. Here's the bid, here's the strike. If you were to buy this here, the effective discount based on today's data would be here. And therefore the effective price for this stock would be about 50.75. And so it gives you all the good picks. And you know, usually there's a couple. So here we got about 5 that it thinks are good picks. All of these seem to be Cloudflare. They're kind of various trades from, you know, 6/20/25, so a while from now. But then if you are in like 01/17/25, stuff like that, 06/21/2024. So this would have taken me, you know, a long time to find myself, parsing through a lot of options chains. Here it just does it in, you know, a few minutes. Okay, so that's how it works. And you know how it's built. You can see that I just ran .NET run, so it just works as a CLI. And now why did I choose these things? So, you know, I chose F# because it's really simple, it's familiar, and has a good scripting and CLI story. In many respects, I think it's just a type-safe version of Python. And so for something like this where we're moving fast, I think this is great. And I love the idea that it's really great for even scaling up from there. So everything I use as an experiment, I can take forward with me. Now for the APIs, I'm using this market data thing, which you can see here. It's just like an API thing for market data. There's a lot of these. But what I actually found is that APIs for stock data, and especially ones that return options chains, are pretty hard to find. And those that do exist are pretty expensive to work with, especially for side projects. So the lowest tiers are around $30 a month. And for some of these, if you want options tiers or options chains, you actually have to go to a higher premium tier, which can run you like 60 or more, which for like a side project experiment like this is ridiculous. Now I think this probably makes sense because most of the users of these APIs are theoretically like trading off this and making money off of it. But you know, that's not really true for me, who has a bad like P&L story. So $30 a month even is like quite a lot for a dumb experiment like this. Now that said, I ended up going with market data because one, it had the options chain data I wanted and it was available on the lowest tier and for trial usage. So I knew I could start out with, you know, very low payments. And then if I wanted to, it would be reasonable to go to the next tier. It also had an easy way to test. I didn't think this was that important, but it was actually really useful. For the Apple stocks, you can have unlimited API hits. And so this is a great way to kind of build your prototype and make sure it kind of does what you want before having to pay them or using any of your API limits. And then the last one is it had decent docs. Some of these like existed, but they obviously weren't built for developers. The documentation wasn't that good. And so it's kind of like, if it was hard for me to get set up and started, you don't have good docs, then I'll just choose someone else. Now, I will say that I'm not married to them, but it did serve its purpose pretty well. My one gripe with them is that sometimes the options chain data lags by a few days. This is actually why here in the project I have this oldest data, because I was getting old data and I wanted to sanity check like when is this data from. But that has only happened to me like a few times, and theoretically it's always previous close. So I don't know if this is like a widespread issue or just like, a lagging thing at that point. And anyway, for like a side project like this, it doesn't matter. I'm not doing real-time trading or anything, so not a big deal for me. Next. So this is a fun little project, but I probably won't build too much more with Option Scanner. I mostly consider stock options to be like glorified gambling, and I think my current strategy for wealth building is far easier, more probable, and has greater returns. And you can kind of see that here. Now, if you want to get full access to the source code and maybe, I don't know, do your own option scanning or whatever, that source code is still available in the HAMY Labs example repo, and that's again available to Hominions members. Now let me know if there's anything specific you're interested in learning more about around this project. I've got a few deep dives that I'll probably pull out from sections of this, but it would be useful for me to hear what you're interested in so I can make sure to cover those as well. If you like this post, you might also like why F# is a fun programming language, how I got interested in F#, and my journey from software engineer to entrepreneur and back again. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.